Good evening, New Zealand and the world, for those people that are overseas and taking the time to tune in. I know we've got a few floating around the place. My name is Lucas Lawmans. This is Kiwi Voice. We have David Trotter, Carl Barclay and Levi Wolf from Operation Good Oil here to talk to us. We got a really good response in terms of our brief overview of the report that these guys have put together with regards to the closure of the Marsden Point oil refinery. So thanks everyone for taking the time to hang out with us.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Awesome. Good to have you on board. So look, probably the best place to start now, in terms of the live stream, we may get a handful of people on a Friday evening, who knows, but this goes up permanently on Kiwi Voice page, and the viewership and reactions, etc., they do grow over time. We seem to have a fairly solid base out there. Tell us about the protest. I think in the earlier conversations there, Levi, this was directed at you, but tell us about the protest itself in terms of Operation Good Oil outside of Marsden Point or thereabouts. Why did it start? How did it start?
Well, the actual protest itself is it's about fuel security. It started. For myself personally, I can really only answer for myself. It started for me when I went after the parliamentary protest. I went up to Marsden Point to join in on an occupation.
Gotcha.
Things didn't go so swimmingly up there, so I came away from that, and I realised that this was a very serious issue, and through the people that I met through that, I met Carl and David there, and just through our association, it kind of has just morphed into what we're doing here, basically.
Yeah, understand. So what's, in terms of your experiences up there, David and Carl, like how much time do you spend up there? I mean, I think you might come and go a bit, and how have you found it? Either one of you can go into that.
Okay, I actually didn't go up there in the end.
Okay.
I met the guys who were basically taking charge of what was going on there. They were here with me in my home. I actually held back. I wanted to have a look at the background, and this is because I love to do research, and I thought I need to focus my attention on paperwork and data, and then look at that rather than me. I'd just be a sore thumb in the middle of a protest. I felt like that at Parliament as well. I was in the wrong place. I needed to go home and do background work and have a look at documents, evidence, gathering what I can from good sources. Not put anything false there. So I actually stayed here and took it one step at a time. And I'll come to the next bit maybe after. Carl, you want to explain your participation?
Yeah, I've been around New Zealand 65 now, and I've been involved with quite a few activities. 1080 Poison, Pike River Mine, and then 23 days in Wellington.
Gotcha.
I looked after the little toilets there, and I'm an engineer and farmer by trade, or engineer by trade and a farmer. I've had a concern about Marsden Point for a number of years because it's been in the media about what was going to happen, and when the opportunity came to join Brad and them up at Marsden Point, I took that opportunity. But I was a couple of weeks after they'd actually had the first approach there, so
Gotcha.
I was involved helping Brad with his base camp at Waipu, and it sort of fell apart, and Levi and Operation Good Oil started up. So I thought they seemed to be more in tune with what I wanted to do, which is what Dave's doing, gathering information. And I've been tracking the ships coming from overseas and the time frame they're spending around New Zealand. And the number of ships we told were going to come was 35 tankers. We're over 102 I've counted so far, and I've only been doing it for about 3 months.
Right.
And
Yeah, absolutely.
halfway through the year now, so we're in our 27th week.
Yeah, so significant movement there. From the experiences you've had, both Dave with your research at home and Levi and Carl at the site, etc. How is? I mean, a big part of it, from what I can pick up, is awareness. Is that correct in terms of the, trying to raise awareness of the issue around New Zealand? Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it is. That's one of the main drives behind what we're doing. It's really important that we try and get this out to more people. What really kicked it off for me was back in March when I listened to the morning report with Catherine Ryan on Radio New Zealand. That was the first thing that made my ears perk up. Now, this is during the time that, the guys were starting the Marsden Point digging occupation. And it all came around about the same time. That, come the 1st of April, Marsden Point will be closing. And Catherine Ryan was there. She gave an excellent report, which I do have all of her audio files. They're absolutely amazing. But also, it was when Land Transport jumped in on the interview and Maritime New Zealand. And everybody, a few others as well, they jumped in and they were expressing really, really concerned, with what was going to happen with the fuel supply. Also, the asphalt that had already stopped, months before, and there was already complaints with the asphalt. We know that was a byproduct from the Marsden Point refinery. Also, other products were also being lost as well. So, the Catherine Ryan brought out a really good report by Hale and Toomey, and they had already written this report back on the 23rd of March 2020, believe it. A second report a good few months later about the impact of refining New Zealand's impact of conversion to a fuels terminal. Where they brought up the issues in the next report on the 16th of December 2020 regarding fuel security and fuel stock holdings costs and benefits. So they had already expressed concerns, along with Burrow Finlay, for the solicitors and barristers in Wellington, had already made serious comments about what could go wrong. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, Hale and Toomey are advisors to the fuel oil industry in New Zealand. Burrow Finlay are the guys, professionals, who actually did the paperwork when Marsden Point came from a government-owned structure into a public-owned structure. So, I mean, these are professional people that know what they're talking about. And when they express concerns, you need to listen. So that was the driving point that drove me to just keep digging and digging and digging. And then I met up with Levi, then met up with Carl, and we all had the same things going. We shared everything that we had, and we thought, right, okay, we need to bring this to public awareness. We're in a bad position.
Sure, absolutely. So you did feel the importance of the issue from all of that information that you had gathered over that period. So, I mean, what was the next step in terms of leading into the report? So this is a question for any one of you three, whoever wants to jump in and start it. What made you want to put the report together?
So many issues regarding the refinery, and that it should not be shut down. In my hand is a piece of bitumen that was thrown from one side of the state highway to the other up near Amberley. That's one issue. We've lost the CO2 production. We've lost the sulphur production. Both sulphur and CO2 has been taken out of the fuel. The government goes on about the carbon neutral stuff. Can they guarantee that fuel coming in from overseas now is the same low carbon content as New Zealand manufactured fuel?
I don't think so.
That was one of the concerns that was also brought up in Radio New Zealand, and Hale and Toomey also brought it up, that we have no actual guarantee of the quality of the fuel that's been brought into this country. In fact, if it wasn't up to New Zealand standards, which Marsden Point put out a perfectly beautiful product that was totally compatible with all our vehicle furnace and shipping engines, that if it was wrong, it would have to be sent offshore to Australia to be refined and then be brought back into the country. We haven't got the time for that. We rely on, as Carl's been tracking, the shipping that comes in here is vital for this country's operation. And we have got no records of any good stock holding that we can actually rely on. That if one ship goes wrong, certain parts of this country, probably possibly the South Island, could be left in our deep dark hole.
Yeah, understand.
Yeah, so for me, it was the reason why I thought we should get this report out there is because we had all this information. You know, David was doing good work, Carl was doing good work. We were all working as hard as we could, but we were finding that people around the country were actually really quite ignorant, and there was a lot of rumor and gossip flying around. So we thought, you know, let's collate all this information, all this data that we've got, and let's put it down into a document that we can disseminate, and hopefully give people some facts that they can look at.
Yeah, for sure. And we've had probably since I did the brief summary 2 days ago now, we've had half a dozen people that have contacted us asking for a copy. So that's positive. How else have you worked on the distribution of getting this information out there? You're just going through all the alternative media outlets such as myself. How are you going about it?
Yeah, well, we are doing the alternative media outlets. We're doing our Facebook, our Telegram, but we've also got Carl and David who are about to. Carl's already hitting the street in the South Island. David's going to go to join them, and they're going to tour the South Island and start, door knocking, meeting people, disseminating the report physically and the link to the download. Yeah. Bloody good.
So what are some of we covered off a couple of points that I picked out in a little bit of a hurry when I did my summary the other day. Anyone can jump in here. What are some of the key points you'd like to bring up from the report that you think's worthy of talking about in this format?
Well, something I picked up on, not from the report, but looking into something else, and I've passed it on to David a couple of days ago, is that the closure of Marsden Point and the decommissioning of the plant is supposed to happen in June of next year, not April this year. So they've brought it forward. So we're actually in a process now where we weren't even supposed to be in this state.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, that's interesting.
Completely still operating until June next year. But what it sounds like is when the government wanted to sell Z and Ampol Australia wanted to buy it, they put the pressure on the government saying that the refinery has to close, otherwise the deal doesn't go ahead.
Well, that was going to be my next question. What do you think the rush, and you think it is around that economic setup in terms of the deal for sale?
Oh, that's one of them, but there's probably other issues. Without fuel, we can't farm, and without fuel, we can't transport anything. So if they want to put pressure on the people in New Zealand, the easiest way to do it is to cut off our fuel supplies.
Yeah.
And now we have no crude oil here, and we have no operational refinery. We are stuck, reliant on 175 tankers coming here on a regular basis.
Yeah, understand. And with the instability in the world at the moment, obviously the war in Ukraine, Russia, obviously the rhetoric around Taiwan, China, and basically the state of just about every freaking economy on the planet. Do you think that's that's going to put further pressure on us way down the bottom of the world? Is that going to have an effect?
Well, either we're going to have a shortage or there's going to be a huge price spike, because on the news today they were talking about the price of fuels going to go up due to the OPEC cutting back oil production. But the week before that, and nobody's highlighted this and come on the news and talked about it, is the New Zealand dollar's gone down, so anything imported is going to go up. So instead of having crude oil that might have gone up and we could have accommodated that in our price, we've now got finished product coming into this country with a higher price on it. And it's going to have the higher barrel price overseas, and it's going to have the lower dollar, which is going to force the price up even more. And then she puts the 25 cents back on it whenever that happens.
Yeah, I think it's March. Yeah.
Oh, it could happen sooner. Sooner.
Of course. Yeah, it could. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a key thing that people kind of overlook, is that not only is the Kiwi, excuse me, not only is the Kiwi dropping against the USD, but every part of the process you've got, the cost of shipping is going to go up. The cost of the actual refining in the Singapore and South Korean refinings, the margins are going to go up. So and the cost of the barrel of oil is going to go up, and the cost at our end of the shipping of the guys from the ports to the petrol station is going to go up. So we're going to see this exponential increase that was brought up in the report. So it looks as if it has been accelerated, and we're seeing this much earlier than we actually anticipated.
Yeah, for sure. What would you like to see happen? Obviously you would like to get the refinery back open, refining. But are there some steps beforehand that we can go through before we get to that point? What would you ideally like to see happen in the short term?
Well, the government needs to take it back, some sort of control over it, because they have got control over it. And it needs to be handed back to the New Zealand shareholders that actually want to keep it open. And we need to get rid of all the overseas and oil company shareholdings. They need to be out of the industry. We don't need them controlling what's happening in New Zealand.
Yeah, so speak to that in regards to the ownership side of things and the investment over the years. That was a point that was in the report in terms of the amount of money that Kiwi taxpayers have put into the thing over time. Talk to us a bit about that.
David's probably the best one there. He's dug up a lot on that.
I was actually going to pass that on to Levi. In the last interview, you actually clearly distinguished the amount of billions of dollars that were injected into this, and the man. Oh, and an extension from the pipeline up to Weary from Marsden Point. I mean, there was 5,000 people involved in building that. It was something like $160 billion at the time, going back in the 70s, or was that the 80s one? I mean, there was the amount of money that was invested in there in the first place under the Muldoon government when it was reconfigured and expanded again. But the thing is, when we had the refinery, when I've stated this before, but listen, back in 1973, when we had the Yom Kippur War, oil spiked from $3 to $20 a barrel. Now, it didn't seem a lot, but it was a lot back then. But the thing is, New Zealand had a backstop, and it was called Marsden Point. I've got figures from Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment. The oil supply, transformation and consumption through from the year April 2020 to March 2021. Now, these are figures I got off massive databases from them. I brought it down into a readable fashion that our indigenous production of crude oil, condensate and naphtha in 1 year was 1,192 million litres.
Wow.
LPG 289 million litres. The trouble is they exported most of that and left us with a net of 366.33 million litres. Critical figures come into play. They imported a lot of crude for the refinery, blood stocks as well. Imported 3,963.71 million litres. The refinery output, the oil fuel intake to the refinery was actually 4,363, but then you've got to take into what their stock holding was at the time as well. But Marsden Point was putting out regular petrol, premium petrol, diesel, fuel oil, A1 and other petroleum products. The refinery output was 4,243 million litres a year. But that was our backstop, even without the other petroleum products that were imported to New Zealand, because we have got a very small margin of what we can actually produce here. But if anything went wrong, as was brought out by the ministers of transport and stuff like that, was New Zealand had a backstop enough of between 3, push it up to 10, and maybe extend it to 20% of fuel production here of all types that could actually keep critical infrastructure running, like food, agriculture, arms, trucks for food distribution. We would still have enough to break through. But now that we rely on totally finished products that may not be up to grade, may not be delivered in time, and the price could rapidly go up now through this carry on with these wars and stuff like that, and OPEC doing what they're doing. We could see ourselves in a situation of a barren desert land as far as fuel oil goes. We've got nothing. We've got nothing to fall back on. And this is the main reason why we're doing this. We can see it. Us three can see it. A few other people can see it, but this is the reason for the push and the drive for us to get this out there, to make people aware that, look, we could be in a nasty situation.
Can I just say, the only way that sorry, Carl, the only way that we're going to get this refinery back open, in all honesty, is if we get the globalist ideologues out of our parliament. It's really as simple as that, because
it seems to be that with pretty much a lot of policy in that at the moment, essentially. Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yep.
It's all connected,
Yeah.
So we've got a quick question that's come through that I think is probably fairly relevant. In terms of to get it reopened and working again, what's involved in that in terms of cost? Are you guys aware of that sort of figure?
Well, I've been told though, and I've got photographs from the local paper up there, that they've actually cut wires, and I've heard from other people that have smashed up control gear. So that's going to be quite a major cost and quite a bit of time. But it could be in our advantage, because if it's on the older part of the plant, we can replace it with modern technology, modern control gear, modern sensors, and maybe more computer in its background, which will mean there will be less staff required to run it, and it will become more viable and more economical.
Yeah, can I speak into that? We really don't know 100%. What we do know is that they have plans to create a hydrogen plant up there, and also more than likely a sustainable aviation fuel plant. So that's probably going to involve the jet fuel, the A1 plant. So we don't really know too much about exactly how much they have destroyed of the plant. David has been following it. They are doing a bit of a rundown on their website. But at the end of the day, we've got a government that just spent $150 billion on a load of crap and giving out lollies. So I think it's really kind of irrelevant at this point, especially when it's an emergency. You just do what you've got to do to get it done, really.
So what do you think do you think it's purely economic, profit related? Do you think it is potentially the ideology, the green ideology, or do you think it's a combination of multiple factors, including those?
Well, it could be that, because of COVID sort of cut back the amount of passengers coming into New Zealand, so that cut the jet fuel out of it. 2 years prior to that, when they stopped making the bitumen, that took a big piece of the revenue out of it, but it also took the critical infrastructure away from it. That meant the government wasn't so liable or so responsible to keep the facility operating.
Yeah, understand. Okay, so was someone going to jump in there?
Well, just for the last word on that topic, there are engineers that do this work. They will strip a refinery back. It will take between 18 and 24 months, but they will go in there, strip it all back, take out anything that's broken, repair anything that could be still a viable asset within 10 years. If it's worth keeping, they'll keep it. So as for the destruction that's been happening, that I've read on Channel Infrastructure's website, I'll call it destruction because that's what it is. It is possible that that the skeleton that's there, and it is a skeleton now, can actually be brought back to life. And that's what we kind of want to get out to New Zealanders as well, that actually become aware of the situation that we're in. That look, it's all not lost yet. If we can do what Carl was saying and Levi was saying, get the people out of the government that shouldn't be there, and the corporates as well, the oil companies. I'm not going to name anything. They've got a structure in place there that this is profitable for them to run it the way it is. They look at doing a hydrocarbon plant, an advanced jet fuel plant, but that's not going to be. That's going to be like in 2030. I mean, these are all pipe dreams that they haven't even looked at the science that's involved in there, or started running any tests in there. You can read it on their websites, and you can read it in the government documents that this is a pipe dream. It was shut down for a reason. I can't say 100% what it is, so I'm not going to go down any rabbit holes or conspiracy theories there. I only know what I've got on paper.
Yeah, they're basically vandals.
The engineers I've talked to that work at Marsden Point or worked at Marsden Point have said there was never any mechanical issue for it to close down. And as far as the old plant goes, it's about 60 years old, but it's still producing product. They've put in a more modern plant in the last 7 years, which is giving the higher grades, higher octane fuels. Just upgrade what we have to, and possibly that older plant's going to have new technology in the control gear. But hey, it's going to bring it into the 21st century. It's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's the government that forks out the money to pay for it. The oil companies never pay the government back, and it's you and me filling our tanks up that are actually ever paying the bill. So it needs to get back in the hands of Kiwi shareholders who want to invest money in something that's viable and are there for the long-term good goal of this country, and that includes the government. The government needs to get back into having some sort of... They had shares through ACC, or they still got shares through ACC. They had major shareholding through Z Energy, which their pension fund was working through. So for the government to say they've got no input is total bullshit. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And sorry, someone was going to jump in there.
I was just going to say, Lucas, that one thing that we didn't put in the report is New Zealand's consumption of refined or finished fuel products. We actually use in this country around 6.5 billion litres of fuel per annum. So if you multiply that by, I don't know, put an average cost of $2.20 on it, that's a lot of money that we spend on fuel. So, the argument that the money's not there, that's just a specious argument, and it's just a load of it's ardent nonsense. We spend a huge amount of money on fuel in this country, and look, if the government really were left-wing socialists, then, what's up with them? Why aren't they saying, let's take this money that we're spending and let's use it for the people?
Yeah, and they were able to print it in extreme amounts for multiple other, projects and bits and pieces that, obviously I believe that's leading to inflation in some degree, but, when it's required for some other ideological idea, then it's available. But for something... Look, I personally think that the ideology is very strong in terms of, the climate change agenda. This is a quick way to move very, very forcefully towards, away from fossil fuels, etc. So I wouldn't put... wrong term. I hear what you're saying. Yep. But yeah, away from this type of fuel. So I wouldn't put it too far past them in terms of that being a driving force as well. And look, we're getting towards the half-hour period. I am going to have to cut this off fairly shortly. But what I want to know from you guys is, do you have any next steps planned? So the report's out there now. We're going to continue to distribute it to people that ask for it. They're going to be able to get it through contact details through the Operation Good Oil, forgive me, website, etc. as well. What are your next steps? What are the next plans? Are you going to keep on this path? What's the go?
Yeah, I'm on the road and I'm staying on the road. So,
yeah, Carl and David are going to be touring the South Island for starting next week for the next couple of weeks. And while they're doing that, we'll also be keeping in touch and working on a hopefully weekly, but definitely a fortnightly newsletter, which will be disseminated to people in our social media groups. And we've got a follow-up report coming as well. So David might be able to give you a little sneak preview into that.
Yep, nice.
Yeah. There will be a part two. There's a massive amount of other information that could have went into the first one, but it would have taken them too long to put it together. We couldn't wait. This is critical that we got it out when we did get it out. There are other items that people need to know about, that are quite sensitive, especially if it comes to anything like the, Petrol Demands Restraint Act, and there's other pricing and how... I didn't know a lot about what I've actually come to know now about ticket pricing and oil, how tankers actually go into places like Seaview, how they buy their oil, how it's done by colliers, and there's a whole complex arrangement that they have, but it's all money driven, and this is the thing: it's all money driven. So
Yeah.
I mean, this is what when you learn it, you learn about it in the end. Like, I mean, this is where if we do actually manage to get a refinery back, we need to change the rule book. We need to throw that one out. What we have found, we need to throw these ones out. We need to write specific, a procedure. This is New Zealand's oil. We've got to use this. We're going to bring in some other product from overseas because we've all run short. But let's do it in a nice way that we can all agree on, and not everybody's in it for the money. No, we don't need this.
Yep, 100%. Well put, and I think that's a good point to finish on. So we'll chuck up the details for Operation Good Oil's website up on the description of this video once it's posted after our live is finished. I would love to get you guys back on. There's a number of questions that are coming up through the comments there that would be worth going into in a little bit more detail as well. So if you are up for it, yep, Carl, go for it. Yep.
One last thing. I was looking through things today, and I come a history of the Todd family. Goes way back to 1800s in New Zealand. They have been quite instrumental in the drilling and production of oil and gas in New Zealand.
Yep.
And I'm going to try and talk to that family when I get back up the North Island. I've sent them an email today and just see what their engagement would be for them to be one of the main drivers with Marsden Point.
That would be
because I
brilliant.
think they had a refinery in the early days, but the government made it difficult for them, so they got rid of it.
They would have a personal interest, I would say. So, and be fairly driven if you were able to engage them. So I think that's a great idea.
Well, they're a Kiwi family with a lot of Kiwi history, and they love this country, and they do everything that they can for this country. That they might be wealthy people, but good on them for what they've done. They've put it back into New Zealand, and that's what we need. Get rid of the corporates and have these family businesses that have been around for several generations and back them up. It can be a public shareholding with the government have shares in it as well. There's plenty of government departments want to invest in things, so they can invest 100%. In something that's useful.
Yep, I think that's absolutely a good idea and worth following up on again. Hey, thanks everyone for joining us. As I say, we've just ticked over the half an hour point there. We've got to carry on, but it's been awesome talking to you, and let's do this again. Let's stay in touch. Plenty more to come out of this story, and we thank you as well for all the work you're doing in terms of getting awareness out there and the efforts you're making with regards to Marsden Point. We appreciate it.
Thanks very much. And last thing, if anything starts moving at that site in large volume, we need a lot of people up there to stop it from happening.
Sure, absolutely. Well, let us know if there's any movements in that front in terms of action, and we'll post it up on Kiwi Voice.
Well, we'll know when some cranes start appearing and they start trying to take down the superstructure. The vessels won't come down until they get all that superstructure down. So it's going to be a process. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yep, absolutely. Well put. All right, team. We'll close it off. Awesome talking to you, and we'll stay in touch.
Okay, cheers.
Thanks, team.